Chapter 11 of Best Russian Short Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Nullifidian. Best Russian Short Stories. Edited and compiled by Thomas Seltzer. The Signal by Vsevolod Garshin. Semyon Ivanov was a track walker. His hut was 10 versts away from a railroad station in one direction, and 12 versts away in the other. About 4 versts away there was a cotton mill that had opened the year before, and its tall chimney rose up darkly from behind the forest. The only dwellings around were the distant huts of the other track walkers. Semyon Ivanov's health had been completely shattered. 9 years before he had served right through the war as a servant to an officer. The sun had roasted him, the cold frozen him, and hunger famished him, on the forced marches of 40 and 50 versts a day, in the heat and the cold, and the rain and the shine. The bullets had whizzed about him, but thank God none had struck him. Semyon's regiment had at once been on the firing line. For a whole week there had been skirmishing with the Turks, only a deep ravine separating the two hostile armies, and from morn till eve there had been a steady crossfire. Thrice daily Semyon carried a steaming samovar, and his officers' meals from the camp kitchen to the ravine. The bullets hummed about him and rattled viciously against the rocks. Semyon was terrified and cried sometimes, but still he kept right on. The officers were pleased with him, because he always had hot tea ready for them. He returned from the campaign, with limbs unbroken but crippled with rheumatism. He had experienced no little sorrow since then. He arrived home to find that his father, an old man, and his little 4-year-old son had died. Semyon remained alone with his wife. They could not do much. It was difficult to plow with rheumatic arms and legs. They could no longer stay in their village, so they started off to seek their fortune in new places. They stayed for a short time on the line, in Kherson and Donshchina, but nowhere found luck. Then the wife went out to service, and Semyon continued to travel about. Once he happened to ride on an engine, and at one of the stations the face of the station master seemed familiar to him. Semyon looked at the station master, and the station master looked at Semyon, and they recognized each other. He had been an officer in Semyon's regiment. "You are Ivanov," he said. "Yes, your Excellency. How do you come to be here?" Semyon told him all. "Where are you off to?" "I cannot tell you, sir." "Idiot, what do you mean by cannot tell you?" "I mean what I say, your Excellency. There is nowhere for me to go to. I must hunt for work, sir." The station master looked at him, thought a bit, and said, "See here, friend. Stay here a while at the station. You are married, I think. Where is your wife?" "Yes, your Excellency, I am married. My wife is at Kursk, in service with a merchant." "Well, write to your wife to come here. I will give you a free pass for her. There is a position as track walker open. I will speak to the chief on your behalf." "I shall be very grateful to you, your Excellency," replied Semyon. He stayed at the station, helped in the kitchen, cut firewood, kept the yard clean, and swept the platform. In a fortnight's time his wife arrived, and Semyon went on a hand trolley to his hut. The hut was a new one and warm, with as much wood as he wanted. There was a little vegetable garden, the legacy of former track walkers, and there was about half a desyatin of ploughed land on either side of the railway embankment. Semyon was rejoiced. He began to think of doing some farming, of purchasing a cow and a horse. He was given all necessary stores, a green flag, a red flag, lanterns, a horn, hammer, screw-wrench for the nuts, a crowbar, spade, broom, bolts, and nails. They gave him 2 books of regulations and a timetable of the train. At first Semyon could not sleep at night, and learnt the whole timetable by heart. 2 hours before a train was due he would go over to his section, sit on the bench at his hut, and look and listen whether the rails were trembling or the rumble of the train could be heard. He even learned the regulations by heart, although he could only read by spelling out each word. It was summer, the work was not heavy, there was no snow to clear away, and the trains on that line were infrequent. Semyon used to go over his verst twice a day, examine and screw up nuts here and there, keep the bed level, look at the water pipes, and then go home to his own affairs. There was only one drawback. He always had to get the inspector's permission for the least little thing he wanted to do. Semyon and his wife were even beginning to be bored. 2 months passed, and Semyon commenced to make the acquaintance of his neighbors, the track walkers on either side of him. One was a very old man, whom the authorities were always meaning to relieve. He scarcely moved out of his hut. His wife used to do all his work. The other track walker, nearer the station, was a young man, thin but muscular. He and Semyon met for the first time on the line midway between the huts. Semyon took off his hat and bowed. "Good health to you, neighbor," he said. The neighbor glanced askance at him. "How do you do?" he replied, then turned round and made off. Later the wives met. Semyon's wife passed the time of day with her neighbor, but neither did she say much. On one occasion Semyon said to her, "Young woman, your husband is not very talkative." The woman said nothing at first, then replied, "But what is there for him to talk about? Everyone has his own business. Go your way and God be with you." However, after another month or so they became acquainted. Semyon would go with Vasily along the line, sit on the edge of a pipe, smoke, and talk of life. Vasily for the most part kept silent, but Semyon talked of his village, and of the campaign through which he had passed. "I have had no little sorrow in my day," he would say, "and goodness knows I have not lived long. God has not given me happiness, but what he may give, so will it be." "That's so, friend Vasily Stepanitch." Vasily Stepanitch knocked the ashes out of his pipe against a rail, stood up and said, "It is not luck which follows us in life, but human beings. There is no crueler beast on this earth than man. Wolf does not eat wolf, but man will readily devour man." "Come, friend, don't say that. Wolf eats wolf." The words came into my mind and I said it. All the same, there is nothing crueler than man. If it were not for his wickedness and greed, it would be possible to live. Everybody tries to sting you to the quick, to bite and eat you up. Semyon pondered a bit. "I don't know, brother," he said. "Perhaps it is as you say, and perhaps it is God's will." "And perhaps," said Vasily, "it is a waste of time for me to talk to you. To put everything unpleasant on God, and sit and suffer means, brother, being not a man but an animal. That's what I have to say." And he turned and went off without saying good-bye. Semyon also got up. "Neighbor," he called, "why do you lose your temper?" But his neighbor did not look round, and kept on his way. Semyon gazed after him until he was lost to sight in the cutting at the turn. He went home and said to his wife, "Arina, our neighbor is a wicked person, not a man." However, they did not quarrel. They met again and discussed the same topics. "Ah, friend, if it were not for men, we should not be poking in these huts," said Vasily on one occasion. "And what if we are poking in these huts? It's not so bad. You can live in them." "Live in them, indeed! Bah, you! You have lived long and learned little, looked at much and seen little. What sort of life is